100 Winters, Retracing the Great Race Against Death. Written by Jonathan Nathaniel Hayes. Illustrated by Caleb Jingra. Chapter 18, Into Elim. We rolled out of our cots into the darkness of this subarctic morning, stiff and bleary-eyed. Breakfast was a familiar ritual, dehydrated meals for us, beaver, salmon, and kibble for the dogs. Then we made our way to the Koyuk School Gymnasium, home of the Malamutes. The halls buzzed with the energy of kids, excused from class, faces lit with curiosity and mischief. By now in the expedition, Jamie and Caleb were staples of our presentation times. Snow machines were a huge part of life out here, and no one spoke that language better than Jamie. The kids hung on his every word. When Caleb took to the floor sharing how he chased his passion of filmmaking with drones and cameras without a college degree, it lit a spark in some of those kids. You could see it in their eyes. After our talk, we'd take questions for 15-20 minutes. Then came the best part, inviting the kids up grade by grade to meet the dogs. Hatchet was always the star. His symmetrical wolf gray mask, ice blue eyes, and calm confidence melted hearts. But we started bringing out Coyote too. He was a little harder to handle, a little wild, but he thrived on human affection and was a natural choice. When the crowd finally dispersed, and the last hand had ruffled Hatchet's fur, I gave Jeff the nod, and we hitched up quickly and got moving. Later, when I sat down to type out this stretch of trail, I opened my journal. Nothing. No notes, no details, just a few lines about the final stretch into Elim. That was it. I was stunned. I'd been so careful to record every day. Each day had been packed visually, emotionally, physically. How can an entire day's journey be gone from my memory? So I reached out to Jamie in the hopes he could help me fill in the gaps. His recollections brought it all back. It was a rough day, he said. Snow machine tracks were everywhere, going in every direction. It was flat, no real features. We met at this old cabin. GPS said it was actually below sea level. Couldn't tell where the land ended and the marsh began. We kept dropping down into these weird sand pits, then climbing out again. Near Moses Point, we had to weave through a mess of driftwood. It was like a minefield. Picked up the road into Elim from there. It was pretty boring and uneventful. His words pulled the fog away. I remember wondering, scanning tracks, trying to guess which ones Jamie had left for me to follow. The terrain had all blended together, wide open and disorienting. I remember the drop-offs, the sand pit-like basins, the sense of really going nowhere in particular. My journal picks back up near Elim. Night had fallen. The cold deepened, and the tracks I was following spilled onto a plowed, ice-slick road that twisted up into the hills. I was starting to worry, tired, unsure of distance. Dogs were pushing hard. I was happy to see Jamie coming toward me from the village, headlights bobbing. He turned around in front of my dogs and began to lead us. The dogs surged. The second they recognized his machine, it was game on. That meant food. That meant rest. That meant home for a night. Their trot exploded into a gallop. I fought to keep the speed in check, one hand gripping the handlebow, the other stretched out toward the snowbank, clutching a snow hook. I veered toward the edge and plunged the hook into the snow while easing out a calm, steady, whoa. It held, but I could feel it wouldn't hold for long. Jamie, thankfully, caught on and stopped too. That momentary pause was enough to ease the team's chase drive. I sprinted up the gang line and unhitched half the team from their tug lines so that they were only attached by their neckline. I had barely made it back when the team lurched forward again, yanking the hook free from the snowbank. We rocketed forward down the ice road, sled runners screaming across the ice and gravel, headlamp beam dancing wildly ahead, painting a jittering path as we tore downhill. Jamie was impressed enough with the team's speed on this stretch to film his speedometer. Despite half the team being unhitched and me riding the brake, we were averaging 17 miles per hour, 600 miles into the journey, and my dogs were still digging deep. They never stopped surprising me. Mitch Seavey once told me something about the difference between my Siberians and his Alaskans. Your Siberians will always give you 70%, he said. And that's not a bad thing. They're keeping something in reserve. Alaskans, you have to hold them back. They'll run themselves into the ground without thinking twice if the musher isn't careful. He wasn't wrong. His dogs had hound blood, bred in Europe to be bold, fearless, reckless hunters. They knew their humans would feed them when they were hungry and fix them up when they were broken. My Seppalas didn't come from that world. They came from centuries of Arctic survival, dogs whose humans couldn't always feed their families, much less a team. Often dogs were cut loose onto islands in summer and left to hunt or starve until they were needed again. That kind of heritage wires a different instinct into a heart. My dogs don't give everything unless it matters. They hold something in reserve because they never know when the next storm is coming, when the next meal is coming. You survive by pacing yourself. But here's where I was coming to see Mitch's rule wasn't absolute. When conditions get truly extreme, when the wind howls hard enough to flatten a man, when the trail disappears under blowing snow in desperation, my dogs don't shut down. They wake up. They rise. Something in them says, now. Now is when we give it all. And they do. Not just for themselves, but with me, for me. That kind of heart, man, there's no training for it. Just like Togo, you either have it or you don't. And on this expedition, I was discovering they did. Leonard Seppala described Togo's drive the same way. How the little dog came alive in the fiercest weather, ears pricked into the wind, as if the storm itself called to him. It's no wonder Seppala trusted him across Norton Sound, where ice could vanish under your feet in an instant. And the truth of their inner strength and drive would soon reveal itself to me in a way I could never have imagined. I had young, fast Juno filling in for Vodka that day. Vodka was my steady old veteran, dependable, a cornerstone of the team, but Juno was the rising star. Both were white with piercing blue eyes. Vodka was short and stocky. Juno was tall and lean. It was like watching a veteran actress, still beautiful, still capable, forced to stand aside while her younger understudy takes the spotlight. Vodka knew Juno would one day claim her leading lady role, and she resented her for it. You could see it in the way she'd cut Juno a sideways glance and an almost inaudible growl. But Juno hadn't always been the rising star. In fact, she was my kennel's Togo story, the ugly duckling no one expected to shine. Like Seppala's famous lead dog, Togo, Juno had been the runt of the litter. She was so frail she couldn't hold her ground at the feed bowl. Her litter mates shoved her aside, leaving her thin and hungry. Like Seppala himself, I doubted she'd ever make the team. I kept her anyway, not because I saw promise in her, but because she was such a sorry specimen I couldn't in good conscience sell her to anyone. In an older era, the old school kennels, Juno wouldn't have been allowed to live. But I'm a softie, and like Seppala's wife who refused to let him cull Togo, the women in my life make sure that my soft spot stays intact. And then, just as if she'd read my children's book on Togo and decided to follow the script, Juno proved me wrong. At 10 months old, I slipped her into a harness for the first time. If you're going to eat my kibble, you're going to earn your keep, I told her. She was too small to add any power, but within a few yards, she settled into the work like the ugly duckling to water. Anytime the dogs in front of her slowed, she'd strain to pass them. I moved her up in the team, closer to the lead. By the time she turned a year old, she was in point, right behind the leaders. And I noticed something remarkable. Every time the leaders stopped on command, Juno tried to pass them. It wasn't defiance. It was sheer drive, that deep-seated instinct to go forward no matter what. Like Togo, Juno earned her place, not by size, but by heart. She proved, as Togo had a century before, that greatness sometimes comes in the smallest packages. We pulled into Elim and parked in a narrow alley behind the school. Jamie helped unhitch the team, and I got them fed, each tail wagging low and slow as the soup and raw meat and kibble hit the bowls. Jeff had a dinner waiting. Same old dehydrated stuff, but with a treat. Boiled hot dogs he'd picked up in town. It might as well have been filet mignon. After a day we'd have, it was a banquet. The Elim school let us crash in a tiny room. We each carved out a patch on the floor, tossed down our sleeping bags, and I swear lying down on that floor would not have felt better had it been a king's bed. That night I opened my journal. The laughter of Koyuk's children still rang in my ears. It pulled my mind inevitably to Nome a century earlier. Watching the European and native children laughing and playing together that morning, I thought about the added motivation Seppala had for taking the great risks he did. He was not just saving children. He was saving children he knew in his own hometown. And he was not just saving someone else's children. He was running to save his own daughter. Sigrid, his 8-year-old daughter, was among those most vulnerable to the deadly outbreak in Nome. As a father of 4 beautiful daughters myself, I can tell you that had I been in his shoes, no effort would have been too much and no risk too great. I pictured her bright Scandinavian braids tucked into a fur-lined hood with cheeks rose-colored from the cold, waiting for her daddy to come home, unaware how close danger had crept. I too would have been driven with an unstoppable fervor to drive as far and as fast as I could. In that moment, I felt closer to Seppala than ever before. Physically, I was drifting to sleep, but spiritually, I was standing on the runners. Let's go, Sepp, for Sigrid, for all of them. Nothing can stand in our way. I want to thank you for listening to this audiobook. And if you're listening to this, it means you appreciate it. So I want to ask that you do us just one little favor in return, that you click on the Amazon link below and order a copy of this book. Or if you'd like, you can request an autographed copy by reaching out to us on social media at MUSH MAINE or our website, MUSH MAINE. Don't forget to like, to subscribe, and to share this audiobook. And until next time, happy trails and Godspeed.